Thank you for joining us today. So, could you briefly introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi, good morning, Yoshi, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Mitchell Chua, and I am a lawyer from Gateway Law Corporation here in Singapore. Nice to meet everyone.
Nice to meet you. So, you are a professional lawyer in Singapore. How long have you worked as a lawyer in Singapore?
Sure. I've been called to the bar in Singapore here since 2015. So, almost 9 years that I've been working in this profession.
Okay. So, you born in Singapore and you grew up in Singapore as well?
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
I was born in Singapore.
So, your student life is in Singapore and get a bar exam in Singapore as well?
No, I actually did my law school in Australia, and that's a very unique situation for Singaporeans because Singapore, we used to be a British colony, and so our laws were adopted from the British system. So we have what is known as the Commonwealth legal system. So for Singaporeans, we can study in Australia, we can study in UK, and then we can come back to Singapore and we can still practice Singapore law. There's certain requirements that we have to do, but for me, I studied in Australia.
Okay, interesting. So you studied in Australia as a law bachelor, and then it should be you tried bar exam in Australia, then pass it and come back to Singapore, or you tried to the bar exam in Singapore?
Yeah, good question. So technically, I could have stayed in Australia to take my bar exam there. But of course, my family, my mom and dad, we are all, based in Singapore.
Yeah.
So at that time, I made a decision. After I got my, like you said, I got my bachelor's in law from Australia. I decided to come back to Singapore and do a conversion course, which is required under Singapore law. So I came back, I did a conversion course in Singapore, and then I took my bar exam here in Singapore. That's why I'm qualified to practice in Singapore.
It's interesting. So you say conversion course, like it takes a long time or it's just like a short period?
So the first conversion course that I had to do was 6 months. So again, another unique situation for Singaporeans studying overseas. You come back with your law degree, you take a conversion course, and you work in a law firm, like a pupillage, you understudy a senior lawyer, senior solicitor. And then after that 1 year, you have to do the normal bar course with the other Singapore graduates. And then you do the 6 months course, and then you do another 6 months training in the law firm again. But there are 2 rounds of bar examinations. So I did one after the first year, I did one more after my second year. Then finally I got called to the bar here in Singapore.
Sounds like even you say it's like you can convert, but it takes a long time. So it takes totally around 2 hours after come back from Singapore.
You're absolutely right. It took me 2 years, even after I got my law degree, it took me 2 years to finally get called to the bar.
Wow, it's still like a tough way. So so as you mentioned, you say UK, Australia, and Singapore shares a similar a law system. So you already a Singaporean lawyer. Then if you want to work in Australia or in UK, you also can become a lawyer in each country, or you still need to do some preparation or paperwork or whatever?
Definitely my law degree, I studied Australian law. So I do have a background, I do have a foundation in Australian law. But I think Australia, again, because it's such a big country, so even their bar exam is state specific, so I studied in Western Australia. If I want to take the bar, say for example in Sydney, I think I would have to study, the federal laws, the Sydney laws specific to that state, and then take the bar exam there, so it's a bit unique, a bit different. For UK, I would have to take the bar exam there as well. I'm not sure. It depends on the law of UK, if they have a recognition for Singapore lawyer, whether my Singapore bar can be converted to UK bar.
UK, yeah.
But, that being said, I know a lot of Singapore lawyers who go to UK and then they pass the bar exam there. So we call them like dual qualified.
Dual, okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So yeah, UK itself is also like a complicated country. It's including like Scotland and Wales and England. So even you say UK lawyers, which country or I don't know. So it is complicated, but still at least you are like a type of international lawyer, right?
Yes, I mean you could say that, but for me now, because I think you know my role as well now, I'm specifically in litigation. So that requires me to go to court in Singapore.
Okay.
So again, it's very specialized in the sense that I have to be familiar with the Singapore court processes. I need to be familiar with the Singapore case law.
Okay.
Based on the previous decisions of the courts here in Singapore. So more and more these days, due to my particular role, I have to specialize and familiarize myself specifically with Singapore law.
Okay. Thank you for explaining. So yeah, you say you need to be familiar with Singaporean law system. So you basically work for Singaporean local customer client or for international clients?
Good question again. I think Gateway and maybe on a larger picture, Singapore is very internationalized, right?
Okay.
I think you would know that as well because you've traveled here to Singapore quite
Yes,
a
I
few
did.
times.
Yes.
Singapore, we try to be a hub for Southeast Asia and of course for the rest of the world. So I think the nature of our work is very international.
Okay.
So you are absolutely right. I have a lot of clients from all over the world, whether it's from Germany, from the US, from France, or even Japan, like yourselves. So I can't say all my clients are Singaporean, but it's a very good mix of people from all over the world.
So your client is very diversified, and maybe you have like a stable economy because you have many clients across the world. So even like one country doesn't have like you don't have enough clients, but from the other countries maybe you have many clients. So
yeah, absolutely.
And your firm's name Gateway is also quite lovely, I think, because Gateway its meaning is like to the gate, right? So
absolutely.
It sounds like many like international companies want to come to Asia, and your firm become like a gateway.
Absolutely, yeah. So that was exactly the goal. That was exactly the intention when our managing director Max, when he started the law firm, he wanted our firm to be exactly like you say, the gateway or the door for our international clients coming into Asia to do work here, or similarly for our domestic clients, for our clients here in Southeast Asia who then want to branch out and go into the other parts of the world. So it works both ways. The door, you can go in and you can go out.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Entrance and exit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so perfect. Of course, you can speak English well. I guess you can speak other language, right? So it should be quite helpful for other customers, clients. So yeah. So could you also go ahead, please.
I try to speak a little bit of everything. I'm not very good, but so maybe a little bit of Mandarin, maybe a little bit of Bahasa, Malay or Indonesian. So I try to learn certain phrases here and there, so that I can relate to my clients, So I think that helps a lot. Yeah, you're definitely right.
You can speak Mandarin quite well, right? Is that your second tongue, right?
Yes. So most Singaporeans, when we are going through school, so like primary school, secondary school, we all have to study a mother tongue.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
So for me, of course, it was Chinese. I wouldn't say my Chinese is fantastic. I think conversationally, I can get by. If I go to the food court, I can order food.
Me too. I can do it, I guess. I hope, yeah. But
That's very important.
so it means your ancestors come from mainland China, right?
That's right. Yeah.
To Singapore.
Maybe not my parents' generation. I believe both my parents, they were born here in Singapore as well. So I would be second generation Singaporean. But probably, my grandparents or
great grandparents.
great grandparents, their generation would have come from China as immigrants. Yeah.
So do you know which region in China they come from?
So my mom's side of the family, they are Teochew. And my dad's side of the family, they are Hokkien.
Hokkien, yeah.
So there's Fujian.
Fujian, yeah.
Teochew is Chaozhou.
Chaozhou, okay.
Yeah.
So just example, Fujian, they have also their own language, right? So you can speak also Fujian language.
My mom can. My dad can.
You?
That's another
Story.
I wouldn't say that's another issue, right?
Oh, yeah.
Growing up in Singapore, and I think for me, my family, we spoke English at home. I speak to my mom and dad in English every day.
Okay.
So I guess for me, along the way, I lost the ability to speak, that kind of dialect.
Oh yeah,
Chinese.
sure. This is how to say not useful for you in this modern age. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, so for me now, even at work, mostly I use Mandarin. I mean, of course, English is still the primary language.
Yeah.
But besides Mandarin, I do speak a little bit of Cantonese, very little. Again, it's just like, just normal conversational. Yeah, so I think it also depends on your friends, your colleagues around you, and they speak a lot of Cantonese as well.
So I want to dig a little bit more. You are like a childhood moment. So you born in Singapore and you grow up in Singapore. So of course you go to like a Singaporean public school in Singapore, right? So at the moment, around you, they are basically Singaporeans or like come from other countries and then just like grow up in Singapore. I mean, international student or local student.
Right. So I come from a very typical public school background in Singapore, right? So you're absolutely right. I started off going to school in a neighborhood school.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, I did have already at that time, and this was 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, we are already not so young, but by the way, yeah.
Yeah. We had a good mix of foreign students. So for my time, I had classmates who their family came to Singapore from India.
Okay.
I had schoolmates whose family came from China. And then also I had schoolmates that were from Korea and Japan as well.
Okay.
I had a Japanese classmate when I was in primary school. Yeah. And now I've heard, from my friends or from students in school, now it's even more diverse.
Okay.
Because in a public school, you have people from England, you have people from Germany, from France, and then of course India, China, Japan as well. So we have a very good mix of students, even from a very young age.
Okay, so this is also interesting because it's not happen often in Japan. So are they, like international people come to Singapore as an immigrant or because the company sends them to the Singapore, so they need to stay in Singapore or they try to immigrant to Singapore? Is that like a common?
You're absolutely right. It's both of that kind of situations. So it's either the foreigner, maybe they married a Singaporean here and then they choose to relocate to Singapore.
Yeah.
And of course our expat community in Singapore is very big. For me, if you ask me that question, I believe that it used to be the case that all these kind of students would usually go to the international school, right? But it would be quite rare that children from these kind of families study in local
public school, yeah.
Right.
It's quite rare, I guess.
I think nowadays there's such a huge acknowledgement that Singapore public school is very, very good.
Okay.
I think there must be some kind of ranking, education ranking.
Okay.
And for public schools, we do very well. And so I think the idea that public schools are very good and that the children can get a good education there, I think that's another reason why there's so many foreigners now studying in our local neighborhood schools.
Schools, okay.
Yeah.
So it means it's quite like a competitive for even for entering into like a public school.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Sounds very competitive, yeah.